And then I'm going to unmute Jeff.
Or mute him.
Yeah, you're good.
I
Now,
can't hear him.
Hold on.
I don't know that you can unmute him.
Oh, I don't know if I can. Hell's bells. I can't unmute you.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go back in and redo what I was doing. We're trying a number of things this week. Tim has put together, and the rest of the team, I mean, Dick and Al and Rick and of course Kevin, have all been involved with what we've been doing. And our goal was, our outcome was performing a lab demo at a distance. And we said when we started this that we would come back and assess what we've learned at that and ask questions of you, what we learned through all this as well. So we're going to run this sort of like a question and answer with Tim. Tim's got lots of answers. We have lots of questions. And we've talked about this a bit in the background. We really want to show what our planning time is, our processes to make this happen, and what's it take to do a lab demo at a distance, maybe even with somebody else's hands across 5.5 time zones. So you want to? Is that enough for you, Tim? And I'll key up this next form.
No, I need some more. I need you to stall some more. No,
I need to install some more. Okay. Well, here, let me reboot my computer.
I want to get my screen where I can see everything. Dang it. Sorry about the spinning. Okay. So can you see a document that says preparation for presenting?
Yes.
Okay. You're the only one unmuted, so you got to be my
Yep.
my eyes for me.
I can see it. It's all good.
Okay. We talked about how to do this and how to do like I just said, a group diagnostics from a distance. And, I knew we had the engine bench. And so I just sat down and I'm just trying to kind of show you all the time that went into, I guess, it was by design or by initial intent to do 3 half-an-hour sessions. We went long a couple times, but long story short is to prepare for an hour and a half's worth of content, correct? And so, I started off with just kind of listing all my equipment, what I wanted to do ahead of time, make sure batteries charged and the scan tool would communicate and all the codes were cleared and that the case study, the HMI, was booting up and doing what it was supposed to do. And even though it kind of got temperamental on us there, I want to verify my initial idea. I want to go with the crank sensor case study. And so I started kind of bringing things up that I knew I was going to have to verify and practice with, putting the stuff in red for probably having Kevin do it because he was going to be my hands. I wrote a storyboard on how I wanted to start off with the camera and of course deviated totally from this, but in my head, I have to kind of build things out linear so that I have some kind of a plan. When I present, even at a conference or in front of my students, I can never sit down and read off of this and make things happen. I kind of have to do this in my head ahead of time and then just go with it. And so for the most part, I wanted to kind of see how this was going to play out and what my tools were. And the tools were sharing my screen, sharing Kevin's screen, sharing the what's called the Visor app, which allowed me to show you the HMI display, and I could manipulate that. So I had all that to do in addition to having Jeff watch the chat and report back to me as to what kind of interaction we were getting. Scene 2 was going to be starting the engine up, making sure the check engine lights out. Scene 3 was putting the code in it. Scene 4 was going to kind of be wherever you took me. I had all these steps in the diagnostic process, and then I assigned slides to him in a PowerPoint, and depending on what the crowd was asking for was going to be the slide I went to, which had the correct wiring diagram and all that. Some of that played like that, some of it didn't, but that's okay. So that was before we even started on Tuesday. And then Tuesday I guess, morning before we went live, I had to have Kevin down there at at ConsLab and had to have him start the process. He got well, we showed you the picture yesterday of the I call it the contraption that he put together. He and Stefan down there rigged up, multiple cameras and had sound and had the exhaust system hooked up and the battery charger hooked up and gasoline in it and all that sort of stuff. And then, Kevin's not the technical guy that we all are. And so I had to kind of walk him through the scan tool and things like that. And we just practiced, and it probably did a couple hours worth of practice, just making sure that, he was comfortable switching screens when I needed him to, that he would, he understood how to use the HMI, that he could, at the scan tool, if we had to power off and back up, that he could get the scan tool back where it was supposed to be and all that. So we had, I probably had a couple hours in this document. I had a couple hours ahead of time on Tuesday before we met. We meet. And this is, I'm counting my time, and I want to throw this in the back of your head too, because our education team still meets every morning. And, it's Dick, Rick, Jeff, and I, and Al Santini. And then Kevin's been dipping in and out because he's been involved this week. But if you start adding up all those man hours, it gets a little bit intense. But I'm kind of, when I come to the end here, I'm going to kind of tell you about how much time I had in it. And then you just have to realize that these other guys are with me for a whole lot of hours too, as we discuss where we want to go, where you guys want us to go, how we want this to look, and et cetera. So Tuesday, went off not without hitch by all means. And I think in reality, there's learning that comes from everything. I think we need to not be afraid of failing, or we'll never do anything. I was kind of more concerned about the technology switching back and forth, and then our engine bench, the HMI, kind of got glitchy on us, and that's fine too. We still had plenty of content to work with. He's going to kind of have to roll with it. So we got through Tuesday. We regrouped Wednesday morning. We talked about what needed to be done. I sent Kevin a document and said, getting ready for Wednesday, I need you to go down there early and validate some of this stuff. And it was kind of refreshing things, like making sure we're still on the battery and, we still have gas. And, I wanted to start all over again, clear codes and get it all booted up. And then there were some measurements I wanted him to confirm before, we came back and talked to you all, because we kind of left in a hurry on Tuesday. And there were some unanswered questions. We didn't get where we wanted. And then there were some readings that didn't look right to me. And I just wanted to be prepared when we walked back in Wednesday morning with you all. So Kevin and I practiced probably an hour before Wednesday. And then of course we did Wednesdays, yesterday's, and still had a little glitch, but for the most part, I think we resolved all the content that I was trying to cover. I go back in the evenings, and since I can't see the chat, I go back in the evenings and go through and pull all those up, because I want to see what the discussion was like. Well, I mean, I can remember what the lesson went like, but I kind of wanted to see what kind of interaction we had. And I have to say, that there may not be as many attendees this week as we've had in the past, but there's been a whole lot more chat. So I'd rather have, I guess, the people that want to be here interacting more so than anything. So I felt like that worked out pretty well.
Tim, could I interrupt you just a second?
Oh, you betcha.
Yeah, I want to interject a poll here. I've put together a quick poll. These are things that we want to showcase in the next couple of weeks. Not necessarily the tool itself, but the process of polling. So this is going to show up in your chat window, and your responses are going to show up in your chat window. So this is the first time we pushed this out. I'm going to push it out and let Tim continue, because he's got some really good points to make. So
part of what Jeff's doing is something that we tried during this lesson also, was an online type of a interaction. And I would encourage that too, because there's a lot of, I guess, there's a lot of comments that come out in an anonymous form that wouldn't come out in a face-to-face classroom sometimes. And so, if you have your students in a chat and maybe you know who they are, maybe they've identified themselves, or maybe you don't, you just get comments that show up. I think there's some value to both. In my classroom, I probably every time we did any type of a module or session, I would give them an opportunity to ask a question without anybody knowing who's doing it. And I think we got a whole lot better questions sometimes out of that. We yesterday I made a point of, I would ask, and, as an instructor, you want to kind of give the answer and go right on. And I tried to make a point, since I couldn't see the chat for one thing, but I would wait and let you guys come up with, your answers. And sometimes it took us a couple times, to get you guys off center too, but it was worth the wait. I mean, I again watched that chat, or went back and read the chat last night, and just watched how everybody kind of dogpiled in there, and I like seeing a variety of answers too. So that helps me. We were talking about how do you assess this type of learning, and as I'm looking at those comments, I can see that we're either on track, either I wasn't clear, because there was a lot of them that said, could you ask that question again? And then once we clarified it, I started getting clearer answers. So it's a way of seeing whether, the attendees, your students, however you want to look at it, are actually getting what you're presenting. So then yesterday I was just recapping and then verifying a few things. And then had some key points that I wanted to bring up, and I think we got them covered. Had a PowerPoint, which this is going to make you dizzy, but I tried to cover all kinds of different scenarios, and when you're showing a PowerPoint and sharing your screen, I have the presenter mode on my laptop, and so I could, instead of going in order like this, I could jump from slide to slide if the need be. If somebody wanted to see a wiring diagram for the sensor, or if they wanted to know how to test, a short to ground, I had a lot of those wiring diagrams ready to go if needed. And it's just a matter of being prepared, is the kind of deal. So having said all that, and maybe counting that 13 minutes, I think I probably had around 14 to 15 hours in preparing for 3 hours of fun. And again, that's not even counting the duplicate time of, the morning sessions where Dick and Jeff and Rick are all helping us, come up with which direction to go and how to make this work for you all. So I don't say that to discourage you by any means. I think, as we all make the move from face-to-face to distance, and then maybe back to face-to-face, I think distance learning is probably going to remain a component of what we do anyway. I think we're all going to get better at it. I think we're going to find that simpler is better. I was worried about dealing with one diagnostic code. I thought maybe I should have 2 or 3 in the can here in case we whip through this thing. And in reality, short of the glitch with the equipment, I don't think we were going to whip through it. I think we, I used the term yesterday, we dropped a lot of anchors as we were going of points that in a classroom situation, I would have stopped and really dwelled on. I would have gone on that rabbit trail and maybe not have gotten through the 10 points I wanted to that day, covered 3 of them, but we had some really rich discussion during those 3. And so, again, I think before we did this week, when we talked about what we wanted to kind of present, I think the idea of trying to do this type of presentation in a distance fashion and have engagement was our theme. Wasn't really trying to teach you about crank sensors. I think, well, I'll say I know I learned something about crank sensors. I learned something about testing values and a lot of stuff that I just hadn't. I mean, I'm not wrenching every day for a living anymore. So it's kind of fun to get back into the real technical part of it. Rick is my little go-to guy there. It's like he's got everything in his head there. So I'd get stumped. I'd call him. He'd help. We'd talk it through. We'd figure it out. Kevin would do our hands-on stuff, and we'd show up in front of you guys and find out what your perspective was on it too. So having said all that, I hope, like I said, that you try some of this stuff. I think the core of it is the group discussion, letting the students lead the discussion, putting the topic out there and fighting the urge to answer their questions. Maybe let them chat it to the side, maybe let them actually turn their camera on and discuss it. To me, that type of an assessment helped me know my students better. I said this before, I'm kind of anti-grade. I never have really liked putting a grade on somebody. And I think you all know too, your students, you could probably go out and walk around your own shop and classroom and point to each student and give them the institutional grade that we have to come up with just based on your observation. How do you prove it? How do you document it? That's a whole different game, but you kind of know where each one of your guys are. This distance part puts another element in it where you're going to have to, the chat might not be as effective as having, their face on the camera, but the discussion is still rich, and the comments that they make, you have to be able to, I guess, analyze whether they're on or off subject, and whether they're getting it or they're not. And so, following up perhaps with a poll or a survey like Jeff's kind of doing here too, would be, the ultimate way to find out if they actually got it. I'd like to, take what we kind of did yesterday and Tuesday and Wednesday and put it more into a shorter video where it actually works correctly, and then make it into one of those video quizzes that I talked about a couple of weeks ago when we first started, where the students watch it, it stops, they have to answer a question. And I'll throw this out too. Perhaps a better way of doing Tuesday and Thursday would have been for me to have had Kevin go down there and maybe just record it while it was working correctly, and then edited that. And we all talked about it on Tuesday and Thursday, and it wasn't necessarily live, but it was the same content. So, and he could have been there to make measurements if needed, to answer questions. But so there's a lot of different ways to go. I don't want to tell anybody how to do it. I just wanted to, hopefully, we wanted to show you one way.
So while you were talking there, I'll let everybody know we've got 3 main discussion points, and we might get to all 3 of them. I put up another form and another method that should be open to every one of those. This is, like Rick said, this is a learning process. So we discovered forms right in the chat window, but there is obviously a setting that doesn't allow us to receive from people who aren't within the ConsulLab domain. So it's a setting we've got to search out in our meetings. But we don't know this until we try it. We tested it. We tested it amongst ourselves, but we didn't, of course, test it out to some other email address. So Tim, recap a little bit about the process. Again, I know you've covered the timeline and the hours and all those other things. What other feelings do you have about the engagement? How do we continue to engage our students so that what we produce is nimble, fast on your feet, if you will? How do we make that happen?
I don't know that I have a direct path to that. I probably came into education later than a lot. I mean, I wasn't a career teacher, and I came in where some of the conventional rules and administrative rules, I kind of fought them to a degree. I mean, I decided it wasn't going to work for me, or I was coming prepared. My students weren't, and I was getting frustrated. And this is what led me into team-based learning and stuff like that too. But I don't know. We were talking this morning, and just sometimes meeting with you guys, and we come up with some stuff too. There's something about giving ownership to the student, and something about them buying in. Everything that I did after probably year 3, where I finally kind of got my footing, centered around getting the students to buy in. And what that meant is that they wanted to be there, and they felt like they had skin in the game. And I almost kind of let them run the class to a degree, not walk over me by any means, but the content was pretty much developed by them. So couldn't a lesson like this almost be built by your students, and you just kind of guide them? I mean, couldn't you throw a topic out and let them put together a class, let them come up with it? I mean, there's multiple ways of being creative and getting them to feel like they're part of the process, and that really, I mean, they're responsible for their own education. There's this, we've been down this road before, but there's this mentality of coming to class to be spoon fed. Whenever I would not spoon feed them and they did a lot of the work, there was some pushback on, hey, I'm paying you to teach me and you're not teaching me anything. And I would always kind of clear them up. And I think it's true here too. My job isn't to teach them, it's to provide an environment for them to learn. And that's it. And this is an environment for them to learn just as much as, a classroom or the job that they're on. So I think if you focus on, I guess I told you 14, 15 hours and whatever, and I'm probably weird about maybe overthinking stuff. I like the balance because, Jeff and Rick in particular probably don't get wound up in the preparation, but it comes off just like they did. I mean, and part of it is that they bring the topic to the table and let the students basically do it. And so, long story short is, your students. They need to know that you care. They need to know that you want them to learn, and try things with them, and don't be afraid to fail, because I don't know, kind of a lot of times I'd say, we're going to do something new today. If it works, great. If it doesn't, thumbs down. We'll move on and try something new. And they were never hesitant to try something new, and they were never hesitant to tell you if it sucked too. So
yeah, well, that's once you allow them to be engaged. We talked a lot about the silence that a lot of us use in our presentations, where, I tell people that I'm going to give 10 seconds for you to come up with an answer. And I recently had someone, I don't remember where it was, but it was in the last year, that told me, well, I don't give them a time frame. I just tell them that I am not going to speak until someone asks a question, no matter how long it takes. And that trying to engage the brain in the moment. I saw an instance of this yesterday or the day before, where we gave an instruction, and probably 50% of the chat, once you gave details about the question and the instruction, probably 50% of the chat said, "Can you give that again?" And that's all right. I'm thinking back of like classes with Dave Saylor and those guys, where they would repeat the same question 3 times.
Yeah.
In order to capture the attention of the room. It was very effective. It was an excellent way to get everybody's attention, because everybody's, in those industry classes, a lot of people know each other. They're playing with stuff. They're picking on people. They're trying to get a rise out of people. And he would pull that right in and just get you. Ask the question and wait for the answers. So Bill says, can you take a video and do voiceovers and add questions? Bill, that's a great observation. You can do any number of ways. But I think a part of what the discussion that we had this morning was that we realized that even more, we have to be more concise and take a smaller subject, so that we can teach that, or they can learn that well. And so those things that we choose that are important for us to put this amount of time into need to be very foundational and support and scaffold up to the next levels. And that's where we need to be thoughtful in our planning as to what we're going to deliver.
So some of the chat harvesting that I did last night, or from yesterday's webinar, I guess we just covered almost everything, and I didn't directly mean to do it, meaning I pulled out of there, don't try and do too much in too little time. Often students don't ask questions. I think Dave asked that one, and my answer would be, how do you make that happen? I mean, you have to get them to buy into where they want to do that. It's a different way of learning. They're used to it being shoved their way, and I want it to come the other way. Like Jeff says, wait for an uncomfortable amount of time for an answer. And then what I liked yesterday, in all honesty, Google answers are okay. You know, it's fine for them, I think, to look stuff up and bring it back to me. When you're doing a distance thing, you got to watch the chat for all responses. So, you know, you may need a moderator. Maybe one of your students is a moderator. You don't have to have another teacher, you know, to actually do that. So, you know, there was a couple technical questions that I feel like we didn't resolve from the actual lesson yesterday. That I think what I want to do is I want to bring them back. We're going to come back with the engine bench again someday. Probably do another one of these if that's what you all would like, because I think that there's just some, I don't know, again, some good teaching lessons that come out of it in addition to learning lessons. So, do you have the results from your poll? Yeah.
My poll, that would be a good thing to look at here. Let me queue that up and see if I can get responses. 12 responses, and I will, in my technical abilities here, I will put that on the screen. There you go.
What we're trying to do now, yeah, we're trying to find out where you want us to go next.
So that's interesting.
Get that little bar out of my way here.
I like this feedback because it is really quite visual.
Yeah.
And I'm a visual animal. I won't apologize anymore for my method of learning. But when I can see this, it's, you know, how to present remotely. But with a healthy dose of, you know, folks, quite frankly, if we're going to present on something and it involves equipment, it's going to be Console Lab. So
because we're in lockdown like everybody else. So
yep, that's right.
So this kind of follows something that Jeff and I have noticed over the years, that there's a couple, I don't want to say groups because I'm not trying to divide anybody, but there's a couple appetites for training that we found from instructors, and some of it has to do with they want technical training because of the same comment I just made. I'm not wrenching every day. I'm getting rusty. I want to go back and learn how some of the stuff works. And then there's those that want to learn how to, let's say, present remotely or how to teach. So it's what to teach and how to teach. And the group of how to teach is a little smaller than the group of what to teach. There's a lot of teachers that are happy with how they're doing it. They just want technical content so they stay sharp, and that's great. And we want to provide that too. I've kind of morphed to the orange box where I want to help guys that are new to teaching, that are having difficulty getting engagement, that are having difficulty getting student buy-in, and working with them on ways to improve that. Because, man, it stressed me out when I thought I was coming in prepared and the students were going to be prepared, and none of them were. And I'd put these 15 hours into a PowerPoint or a 3-hour class for the day, and they'd walk in without their book or not even a pencil. And I was getting wiped out. So found some survival tactics that we can share here if that's what, you know, the orange people want. And we'll keep coming up with other stuff too. So we just, I think just more than anything helps me kind of know we're somewhat on track here. So
yeah, no, it's I think the live feedback is, you know, we need to be smoother. I need to be smoother on it on this end, but you know, we're learning. We're getting there. This is grassroots stuff. You know, you guys got to realize that we don't have CarQuest Training Institute behind us and all the resources.
Yeah, all the production equipment that they have, and we're just a couple of iPhone guys making videos here.
Well, and I know Jimmy's getting ready to push the button here, but let me finish with the thought.
The word of wisdom.
The word of wisdom. My word of wisdom is to keep it small, keep it simple in all things. as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, you've got to have a producer, you have to have a director, you have to have the moderators. You know, as these things scale up, I watched one the other day on doing, 5,000 people. Well, boy, that's not something we want to do. So I'll stop talking and we'll probably open this up. Huh?
Well, if you want more engine bench diagnostics kind of stuff, then say yes before you bail out of here today. Otherwise, I think we're ready to wrap up and have our weekend, our long weekend.